Hello, thank you for joining me today. I'm Jan Clothier of Thinking Stamping and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator from New Zealand. And today I'll be sharing with you how I made this card for the inspiration theme at Stampin' Fancy Friday. Now, Stampin' Fancy Friday is a group of past and current Stampin' Up artisan design team members, and each month we have a theme and we post on Instagram a series of projects to help inspire you. And the theme for this month was masculine, so I've used waves of inspiration and some stenciling to get that going. So I'm going to share with you how I made it. There are two parts to the card really, the tag and the stenciled background, but we'll start off by what do you need to put it together. Well, I've based it around the Waves of Inspiration stamp set and the Waves dies, so obviously you're going to need those. Other materials though, you need to have a card base, and I have chosen Starry Sky, one of the current in colours. This is half of an A4 sheet of paper, so it's 21 centimetres scored at 10.5 and 14.8 that way. Now for me that's a standard card base. If you don't use metrics, then just use whatever your standard card base is. So I'll pop that aside. You need 2 pieces of basic white. Now I've cut these half a centimetre smaller than the card front, so 10 by 14.3, and if you're using metrics, half a centimetre is roughly 1/4 of an inch. So 1 piece is for the inside, we'll pop that aside because we don't need it, and 1 piece we're going to work on. You also need some other bits and bobs, so you're going to need some more basic white because we need to cut a tag. Now to cut the tag I've used the tailor-made tags, and I have used the second size here. That's the one I've used. If you like the other shape, then by all means use the other shape. So you need some of that, and also you'll notice that there's a little reinforcer that's part of the set. So these cut the little reinforcers. So again, a tiniest scrap of your base colour, which for me is Starry Sky. You are going to need something for this piece of foliage. Now I cut that using the Forever Flourishing set. I used that die and I cut it from a piece of soft sea foam. So you need that, or whatever green you're going to use. Another little tiny piece of basic white, because I stamped the Happy Birthday. It's the Happy Birthday from the Waves of Inspiration set, and it's just stamped in Starry Sky on a piece of basic white. And the other thing I've got going on here is, if you can see, I've used one of the Waves dies. I actually used this one, that die there, and I cut it from a piece of silver foil from the Brushed Metallics pack, and I did put the double-sided adhesive backing onto it to make it easy to attach. So you'll need some foil and some double-sided adhesive sheet to add that, or you can be brave and use glue if you don't have any of that. So those are the things that you need, but as I said, there's 2 parts to this card really, the tag and the background. So we'll start off with the background. Now I used the Artistic Mix Decorative Masks, which are from the 2022 to 2023 catalogue, and I have used these 2 masks from it. So I thought it would make a nice sort of tartany plaid effect when you put them together, and there's various ways you can combine them, but I'll show you what I did. And the colours that I used for that was I used Balmy Blue and I used Starry Sky. So the way that I like to use masks is I actually like to attach with some washi tape. So what I did was I took this mask and I worked out roughly when I put the tag, because I wanted the stenciling to come down visible beyond the tag, and I put it on a sort of an angle, and I went, okay, that's how I want it to be, because I also don't want to get the outside frames in, so I wanted it to melt away before I hit the outside frame. So I kind of worked out where I wanted that, and then I just got some old washi tape out of the drawer that I wasn't using anymore, and now I'm just going to attach it on. Moved it. Not a good idea. Not that it's going to matter too much on this first one. because the first one is really just the starting point. Knocking the second one out of alignment is much more of a problem. Okay, so I'm just gonna hold that on like that. Okay, and I'm starting with the lightest colour, so I'm going to get my blending brush, which I've already cleaned off, so I've already checked that I haven't got dark ink on it, and then I'm just going to tap and just start blending on the colour. Now, you just go really until you think you've got enough colour. Always easier to build up colour than it is to take it off, so don't get too carried away. And I'm trying to avoid these outside bars, so I'm not getting too close to those because I don't want sort of a hard solid line if I can avoid it. So just I'm just going to check, is that going to go below my tag? Yeah, has it a little bit closer to that bottom bar. Okay, and then what I did was I came in with the second mask, the more detailed one, and I did not take this one off because I wanted to preserve those solid white lines. And if you take that one off, when you stencil in the second colour, those lines will fill in with the second colour. So I left the stencil on, and then I just lined it up so that, what I was hoping to line up, okay, so that in each of these big squares I had that little pattern inside each of those solids. So that's what I was aiming for. And you can see why it's more problematic then if you, because this is quite a linear pattern, if you move the stencil on the second one. It doesn't matter so much if the stencil moves when you're setting up the first one. So now we are going to get our washi tape out again and stick it on. You can use sellotape. I have used sellotape, but if it's going to go over your card like it is here, you want to be sure, I wouldn't use sellotape there, but you can use it in places where it's, if you're not going to have the tape actually on your finished card front. Or if you're going to, if it's a single layer and you're attaching it to the back of the card, then yeah, sure, sellotape's fine. Right, so we've got that. And now I'm going to be a bit brave because this is inky, and so we're going to have to be really careful to avoid blotchiness, blotchy blobs. So the tapping off is particularly important with that darker colour. And then we're just going to go in there and add in a second line of colour. And again, I'm still going to do my best. I may not succeed, but I'm going to do my best to not show those hard outlines at the edge, because just in this instance I want it to look like it fades away. Okay, and this is the moment of truth when we find out whether everything went according to plan or not. So, let us, oops, this is the one I have to be careful of. Just carefully, yeah, the rest of them don't matter. And then our grand reveal. just what we'd hoped for. So step 1 has been a success. We now have our background in there. And it does appear that in this case I did I put more effort into adding the starry sky. So in this case the starry sky looks a little bit lighter. So if you like that darker look, put in more than I did there. Okay, so the next thing we need is the tag. Now the tag is here. I'll just pop that over the side. And to stamp the waves, I used Stamparatus because I wanted a multicoloured thing. So I've already put the wave stamp on here, and I've stamped it so I can see where it's going to stamp. And then I'm going to put my tag in, and I want the head of the wave in there, and I want it to be almost to the bottom. So I'm just working out where I want it, and then I'm going to pop the magnet on so that the tag doesn't move. We're going to start with the lightest colour, and the lightest colour was soft seafoam, because that's the colour of my foliage. So I'm going to put that colour into my wave. So I've done a bit of that. And then I'm going to bring in my second colour, Balmy Blue. And I'm just going to, I've got my, you probably can't tell, but I've got my stamp pad angled so that I'm only touching it in places. Whoops. And don't drop your ink pad face side down on your other workspace, because that creates a bit of a mess. Okay, so now we'll ink that. So we've got a bit of a two-coloured thing going on. And now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I think I'll come back in with a bit more green, because you could have done it in 2 stages. You could have done a green layer and then the balmy blue, but I was hoping to get away with doing them both in the same stamp, but it didn't quite work. So I'm going to come back in a bit more, and now I'm going to take the starry sky, and I'm just going to really try and touch just very, very lightly around the edges some starry sky, so that all my 3 colours are in my wave. That's what I'm aiming for. Okay, I think that has worked. So we'll take that out, pop that away to the side. Okay, so now we've got our foil piece, which I cut from that die. Now, when I was telling you what ingredients we needed, I said, I had backed it with the double-sided adhesive sheet. But if you were brave, you could do it with glue. Well, it turns out that although I did use adhesive backing on this one, it turns out that I never put any on the back of that one before I cut it. So we are going to have to be brave with glue. And, well, we'll just see how that works. Now, the reason you have to be brave with glue, of course, is because if you get glue on the shiny side, it takes the shine off. So we're going to do it this way. We just put a little bit of glue on the silicone mat. We're going to dabble it so that we don't get a lot of ooze, and then hopefully we won't get any on the front. And then we'll just line that up where we want it. Didn't have to be very brave at all, because it worked a treat. Okay, and then all we have to do is just cut off. Now, I got very excessive. I knew that I had way more than I needed, but I also wasn't 100% sure exactly where I was going to stamp, so I figured it didn't hurt to have just a little bit extra to wiggle around with. So we'll just snip off the excess. And we had also better glue on this little beast. Just the tiniest bit of glue. You don't need much. Tweezers are quite helpful when you're dealing with pieces that tiny. Yeah, that's nice. Now, the other thing you'll notice is that I have made a bit of a feature of the tie. Now, the way I've done that, okay, so I've used the metallic ribbon in Starry Sky, and I cut myself 2 pieces. And folded them over. Let's see how my fumbly fingers work on this. And poked it through. And made the knot. And then cut it a bit shorter. And you can use either the, a pokey tool or the end of your scissors, as I'm doing. And I just, because this metallic ribbon frays very easily, I gave it a helping hand. Okay, so I've made a little fray end, and I can always trim that shorter when I need to. And then the other thing I did to finish it off was I took some of the Simply Elegant trim, and because I'd used silver foil, I used a piece of silver and just tied it round the head of that bow. Whoops. Okay. Boom. And a little bow. And we can always fiddle around with the ties once we've got it all together. Okay, so now it's simply a matter of straight out assembling it. So we're going to attach our stenciled piece to the front. Again, I like glue, so because it gives you the wiggle room. Don't need a lot, because when you press the 2 pieces of paper together, you do not want glue oozing out of the gap. So add it on. And then we've got our piece of foliage, which is going to go there, and our tag, which is going to go there. I'm actually going to just trim that tail off. We'll do the same deal with the with this, or you can just be brave and just daub little pieces of glue on. That also works. Tweezers, okay. So we're just going to plop him on. Now we're going to add our tag, and our tag is dimensionaled on. I'm going to be, again, very restrained, just 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom, and 1 in the middle. And we can just flick them off, flick the backs off. And now we can, I'm using my grid paper here just to help me work out where straight is. Now at this point, if you want to, you can trim that a little bit less. You can trim the tails. I mean, I quite like the tails to be a bit long and voluptuous, so I'm not going to trim it, but if you like your tails to be shorter, go for it. And then the very last thing we're going to do is we're going to add on our happy birthday. You could, if you wanted to, just do it whole. I kind of liked the look of it a bit shorter, so I'm going to cut it into 2. And then I'm just going to get a couple of mini dimensionals on the backs. And then we can work out where we're going to pop them. I remember when I made the first card, I spent a bit of time playing around with whether I wanted them to look straight or a bit akimbo, and in the end obviously I went for the slightly akimbo look, so I think we'll do that again, and we'll go happy. Oops. Birthday. Very nice. Okay, and so there we have it, our Waves of Inspiration masculine birthday card with a stenciled background. I'll show you what I did on the inside of this card. I won't do it today, but what I did in here was I stamped a little bit more. I did another multicolored wave, and I added in "You're so totally awesome." Obviously you don't have to do that if you don't want to. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me today. If you live in New Zealand, you're welcome to shop with me. There's a link to my online store in the video end card in the video description below. I'm always happy to answer questions, and you can contact me through my blog or my Facebook page, the details of which are on the end card and in the video description below. And if you haven't already subscribed, please do so you don't miss anything new that I do. Thanks for joining me.